It's up!
Alrighty, welcome to the Young Turks. Cenk Ugarianik conspiring with you guys. So amazing guest for you guys today. Wazni Lambre is going to come on and talk about Haiti. We need to talk about that. It's unfortunately a disaster over there. And Don Lemon's going to come and talk about Elon Musk, a different form of a disaster. But a lot of things on tonight's show might surprise you. I've got a defense of Donald Trump coming up. I got a defense of Chuck Schumer's rabbi. And I've got a defense of a little bit of Elon Musk in that Don Lemon interview.
What?
What is this?
Hold on. I'm getting word in my ear. Don Lemon has canceled the interview. No, I'm just kidding.
Interview canceled. No, Don didn't do that and he wouldn't do that. So we're gonna talk to him later tonight. So share the stream with everybody. Let's get word out there. This is gonna be a great show. Casper.
Well, we begin with one of the most dishonest stories in the news right now in regard to Donald Trump. So without further ado, let's get to it.
If I get elected, now if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole, that's going to be the least of it. It's going to be a bloodbath for the country.
That statement sounds pretty bad. Trump made it during a rally speech in Ohio over the weekend. And if you were to just hear that portion of his statement, you would assume that he was calling for a bloodbath should he fail to get elected in 2024, the general election. Well, the media, unfortunately, with the help of the Democratic Party, has actually done a fine job completely taking Trump's speech at this Ohio rally out of context to make it seem like he said something that he didn't actually say. And the bloodbath narrative that's playing out in the media is not only dishonest, after the full context was made apparent to the Trump critics, they doubled down on making it appear as though he was calling for violence in the country. Now here's the fuller context and then we'll discuss what we think about it. Let's watch.
Mexico has taken over a period of 30 years, 34% of the automobile manufacturing business in our country. Think of it, went to Mexico. China now is building a couple of massive plants where they're going to build the cars in Mexico and they think that they're going to sell those cars into the United States with no tax at the border. Let me tell you something to China. If you're listening, President Xi, and you and I are friends, but he understands the way I deal, those big monster car manufacturing plants that you're building in Mexico right now, and you think you're gonna get that, you're gonna not hire Americans, and you're gonna sell the cars to us. No, we're gonna put a 100% tariff on every single car that comes across the line, and you're not gonna be able to sell those cars. If I get elected, now if I don't get elected, it's gonna be a bloodbath for the whole, that's gonna be the least of it. It's gonna be a bloodbath.
So presenting Trump's statement as one in which he's calling for a bloodbath if he fails to get elected is incredibly dishonest. And Cenk, I mean, I've saw this all over the media over the weekend. There was a lot of backlash to the media because of their dishonest framing and the fact that they took him out of context. And then a lot of people in the media continue to double down, including Joe Scarborough, which we'll get to in just a moment. But I'm curious what you think. Or am I being too fair to Trump here?
No, you're absolutely right. In fact, I covered this speech right after it happened, which you should always check out on youtube.com/theyoungturks. And what I said was, no, he was meant it in an economic sense. Now, he said a ton of absurd things in that speech, as he always does. Has he called for violence in the past? I think he has. And he celebrated it when it's come. But in this particular case, he was clearly talking about tariffs. He said it in an economic context. Not guilty. Now, should Trump be more careful given that people caused the riot at the Capitol because of him, and he didn't really stop them, and they wanted to murder his vice president, and he kind of and he told his chief of staff that he didn't mind. Yeah, given that context, given the history of Donald Trump, he should be a lot more careful about calling for bloodbaths if he doesn't win. Now, having said that, a ton of people say bloodbath in an economic sense. Oh, the stock market, had a bloodbath today with all the selling, et cetera, et cetera. So no, in that context, it was not a call for violence, and I think that the media kind of clowns itself
totally
when they take things out of context like this and are unfair to him. When he said a million horrible things, you don't need to stretch to make this case against him. I think it ruins your credibility, to be honest.
Not only does it ruin the credibility of the press that dishonestly frames Trump in this way, in the future, when they make claims that are grounded in reality and have merit, people will not trust the media. So when you have pundits asking themselves, oh, where did these QAnon people come from? Where did all these conspiracy theorists come from? How come they don't trust in our institutions? Why don't they believe the journalists? Why do they think the journalists are elitist? This is why. This is exactly why. They have done a great job discrediting themselves when in reality, just report the facts. Report what he said in context and don't make it seem as though he's calling for a bloodbath in the country if he fails to get elected in November. Now, with that said, I wanted to just note, you mentioned how bloodbath is used all the time in an economic sense. Just last week, we covered the story about the changes at the RNC and how Lara Trump, who is his daughter-in-law, is now the co-chair of the RNC, and they fired about 60 people. And you want to know what the press referred to that as? A bloodbath.
That's it, they're calling for violence. Okay, guys, that's exactly what we're talking about. And we're now showing you a couple instances. I know it's anecdotal, but I'm seeing it online as well. You take it with a grain of salt if you like. But a bunch of MAGA guys that we interview go, well, on the left, there's one set of people that I sometimes trust. It's Young Turks. And then mainstream media sees that and goes, aha, you guys are guilty. No, guys, I've said meaner things about Donald Trump than almost anyone in American media. So you can go look at tens of thousands of videos. But I never misquote him. I don't take him out of context. And that's why people trust me more. So when I don't kiss the ass of the establishment. And this guy's, let's be honest, there's one other layer here we're not talking about, which is that the Biden team wants to put this out as, okay, here he goes with a call for violence. And when you see the media copying almost word for word what the Biden political team is putting out, that's how you lose credibility, okay? So stick to the terrible things he does say, not to the things he didn't say or didn't mean. He's off prompter there. He's got verbal diarrhea.
Oh yeah.
And look, he did say an outrageous thing there. I know in the context of Donald Trump, it doesn't sound so outrageous, but 100% tariff is mental. It's totally insane, right?
It totally takes away from the legitimate thing you can critique him on, right?
Right.
And it's just, again, I would rather oppose Trump for who he really is as opposed to not liking Trump based on a fantasy that's been made up and manufactured by the Democratic Party or the press. I mean, he's a target-rich environment, don't make things up. All it does is lead to distrust toward the press, toward the media, toward journalists, and it's ridiculous. And by the way, I don't blame Biden and the Biden campaign for wanting to really emphasize this and take Trump out of context and get the media to rile up people into thinking that he would call for violence if he doesn't get elected. I mean, it's a good distraction from the real bloodbath that's taking place in Gaza right now, something that's been greenlit, supported, and funded by our president, Joe Biden. With that said, let's go to Joe Scarborough, who had a proper meltdown this morning, even after the full context of this situation was revealed.
He's talking about a bloodbath for America. It's laid out in the terms of it. And these idiots on Twitter, these idiots on cable news, these idiots on Sunday shows going, well, yeah, presidents, he was talking only about the auto industry, and this is one more. It's just, let me say that at 6:15 a.m. It's just, he knew what he was doing. We're not stupid. Americans aren't stupid. He was talking about a bloodbath. Sometimes a bloodbath means a bloodbath. And when he finishes by saying, and that's just going to be the least of it, seriously, these people may be stupid, we're not.
There really is something rich about Joe Scarborough calling everyone else stupid as he continues to push a completely manufactured and fake narrative about what Trump said during that speech.
Yeah, and you made a great point there, Anna, that I hadn't even thought of. The mainstream media, Biden team, their advocates, etc., have called for bloodbath after bloodbath. The Iraq war, what Israel's doing in Gaza now. The one thing they criticized Biden on was, how dare you withdraw from Afghanistan? So they've advocated for endless bloodbaths. In real life that we committed, thanks to people like Joe Scarborough, he was completely in favor of the Iraq war. 1 million people died in that war. Okay, so now you're gonna talk about an out of context economic quote. And again, you wanna talk about stupid. When MAGA guys, or more important, way more importantly, when independents see you misquoting him in this particular context, you lose credibility that they don't believe you on the 9 other things he actually did say. So, okay, have at it, Hoss. And I know that your demographic of like super Biden lovers on MSNBC, the 98-year-old voters, sorry, but their average age on MSNBC viewers is about 70 years old, okay? So those people are like, yes, we hate Trump so much, Biden's the best. Tell us more things we wanna hear, Joe. Tell us more things we wanna hear. No, in the real world, you lose complete credibility doing nonsense like this. And you think that Trump meant that strategically? Come on, Joe Scarborough. You know Trump isn't bright enough that he planned an extemporaneous, like 10, 15-second little thing in the middle of his talk about tariffs. He didn't plan that. He can't stop himself.
No, listen, not guilty on the bloodbath statement at all. Not guilty, not guilty, not guilty. Now, there was other portions of his speech that were reported on that I thought, well, this sounds really, really bad. There were allegations that he referenced migrants and said that they're not human. So I was like, why isn't the press more focused on that statement as opposed to the bloodbath statement? So then I went and watched the entirety of the speech just to make sure that I got the full context of that statement. Now remember, the press is presenting it as Trump calling all migrants not human. Is that really what he said? Let's watch.
If I had prisons that were teeming with MS-13 and all sorts of people that they've got to take care of for the next 50 years, right? Young people, they're in jail for years, and if you call them people, I don't know if you call them people. In some cases, they're not people, in my opinion, but I'm not allowed to say that because the radical left says that's a terrible thing to say. They say you have to vote against him because did you hear what he said about humanity? I've seen the humanity, and these are bad. These are animals, okay? And we have to stop it. We can't have another Lakin.
So in the end there, he mentions Lakin. He's referring to Lakin Riley, a Georgia college student who was killed. The suspect is an undocumented immigrant from Venezuela. And yes, the right wing has really latched onto that story to do their own campaigning and yes, fear mongering to some extent about migrants. Now look, you can say that Trump specifically referring to MS-13 gang members and murderers like the person who murdered Lakin Riley is meant to paint a picture of migrants in general, and you can be critical of that. But he very clearly was not saying that all migrants are not human.
Yeah, no, look guys. So when he first started talking about people coming over the border being rapists and criminals, he did not qualify it with MS-13 or gangs, and it was an outrageous thing to say. When he asked his administration, can they put razor wire and shoot people coming across the border in the leg and put in alligators as things, he did not qualify it. He has said perfectly vicious and horrible and dehumanizing things about immigrants. So you don't need to make things up. In this context, he was clearly talking about MS-13. Now, again, you could say, hey, you shouldn't talk about any person that way. Okay, that's fair, but don't pretend that he was talking about all immigrants here in one of the few cases where he wasn't. So, being unfair doesn't help you at all. So look, there is one legitimate critique, and Scarborough touched on it for a second. If he had stayed on that, I would have had a different opinion. And one of our members pointed it out, Boomer Dragon Cat. Actually, a couple of them did. Whole bunch agree with us. Thank you. I'll read that during the break. Watch the live show. You'll get so much more. Anyway, I disagree, Jenk and Anna, Boomer Dragon Cat said. He said the auto industry would be the least of it. His bloodbath statement meant what was going to happen to the country. Love you though. Love you back. So in that case, I do disagree with you. I don't think he meant it for the whole country. But the good point is, when he said that'll be the least of it, that was my only concern. And I pointed that out in the live video I made right after the speech. Don't say the least of it. What do you mean the least of it, right? So we're not trying to minimize the things that he has said and the things that he warns about. Oh, you better elect me, otherwise there's gonna be trouble. He said that before, right? Don't stretch, don't be unfair for no reason when he gives you 1,000 things for fodder to legitimately criticize him on.
So in the middle of an economic rant, when he says, and that'll be the least of it, we're going to assume that he's referring to-
No, I'm not assuming, Anna, but I can see how people would think, hey, maybe he doesn't mean economic when he says it'll be the least of it. Do you see what I'm saying? So it's okay, guys, you just now heard it all in context, so you can make your own decision on what he meant.
Yeah, so the final thing that I wanted to just draw attention to was, I think, the worst and also cheesiest part of his rally speeches, which typically begin like this.
It began, as many Trump rallies do these days, with a song by the so-called January 6th prison choir.
Please rise for the horribly and unfairly treated January 6th hostages.
Made up of those serving time for storming the Capitol. Trump framing them as hostages, patriots.
You see the spirit from the hostages, and that's what they are, as hostages. The first day we get into office, we're going to save our country, and we're going to work with the people to treat those unbelievable patriots.
Okay, so I have mixed emotions about this. Number one, no, people who broke the law on January 6th and broke into the Capitol absolutely should be tried, and if they're found guilty, convicted of the crimes they committed. They are not hostages. But the reason why I say I have mixed emotions is because how do you not laugh when you hear that cheesy ass guy talk the way that he did as he was introducing Trump, like hostages, like.
Yeah, it's because Trump's events are like a WWE rally, an event. And that's why I explained this a long time ago, while they'll threaten to kill Jim Acosta, a CNN anchor, who by the way also is taking this bloodbath comment out of context, but has been personally threatened, etc. And then they'll want to take pictures with him and get his autograph. So why? Because they view him as a heel, like you do in wrestling.
Yes.
Oh, he's one of the villains and Trump is one of the good guys. And that's why they have like, are you ready to rumble before the speech? Because they're doing it as a form of entertainment. But that doesn't excuse that absurd framing of them as hostages. Oh, those poor guys that were just trying to bash the cops' heads in as they were going to murder the vice president. Oh, poor them, what patriots there. They were chanting, hang Mike Pence, hang Mike Pence. They were going to murder the vice president. They're not the victims. But remember, Trump and his administration folks were 10,000 times more guilty. They egged them on, they encouraged them, they didn't stop them, and they're the ones who did the coup plot with the fake electors. So Trump is the biggest target-rich environment in politics you will ever see. Needlessly making things up about him is the world's worst political strategy. But the Democrats and mainstream media just can't help themselves. And that's part of the problem.
All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, Wosny Lambre joins us for a discussion about what's happening on the ground in Haiti. He's done excellent coverage in the past, providing some historical context about why Haiti is in the situation it's in today. So we're going to cover that story and more when we come back. Don't miss it.
Now I'm going to do something very different here and read some one-star reviews of the Young Turks on Apple Podcasts. Donnie Franchise said, pretty much it's like listening to a trash compactor. Someone else said, negative, anti-American propaganda. And others said, out of context, misquotes typical leftists who are afraid to debate, just smear. These two would be perfect for CNN or MSLSD. Well, Donnie, you might have a point, because I feel like a trash compactor right now after taking in all those garbage reviews. But thanks for listening anyway. We are, in fact, unapologetically progressive. And if you're not ready for bold commentary, then we're not the show for you. On the Young Turks, we speak up about the issues that matter, and we want to make positive change happen. And now here's why we actually do the show. Mariel Morales said, found this podcast from the true crime podcast, Fruit Loops, and other great progressive podcasts. I've become an instant fan of the Young Turks. Great conversation, great takes, very well composed, factual podcast, very informative. Love to hear that. Z55 said, it's a joy to experience such awareness and intelligence from fascinating people. And Anna is gorgeous and brilliant. Apparently I'm just fascinating, but I'll take it. Paul for Progress said, news well delivered. Appreciate it. KOOK said, Democrats and Republicans are fair game for TYT. And if Anna or Cenk provide disinformation about anything, they will admit they made a mistake and correct it. We appreciate you noticing that we are honest. To people who actually listen to the substance of the show, thank you. Your listenership supports what we do. Leave a 5-star rating for the Young Turks on Apple Podcasts. Let's take the ratings back from the trolls. Everywhere you look, things are getting more expensive. Here at TYT, we understand this. That's why we're not gonna price gouge you or use inflation as an excuse to raise our prices. A TYT membership is not your typical subscription, but basic membership is still just $4.99. So what do you get for that price? For starters, you're getting exclusive programming, unique, exclusive designs from Shop TYT, access to a members-only chat, giveaways, emojis, and so many other amazing perks. But most importantly, you're helping to make an impact. As a TYT member, you not only help us do the shows every day, but you drive real positive change in the process. In 2017, we helped to start Justice Democrats right here on TYT. That's a group that got a dozen progressives elected into Congress. That's amazing, you did that. Your support also funds TYT's very own investigative reporting. Just recently, our reporters exposed the Fellowship Foundation and pressured lawmakers into boycotting that bigoted event. Isn't that amazing? We raised over $30,000 for Jackson, Mississippi and delivered clean water to thousands of people in need. Our petitions, polls, and community of activists help keep the corruption of Washington in check. That's the impact of what just $4.99 a month from our members can do. And we're just getting started. Positive change doesn't occur overnight, but with your contribution, we can make it happen together.
A new TYT app experience is now available. Check out brand new features like voting in polls and signing petitions. You can also follow your favorite TYT shows, join the live chat, engage in message boards, search for and follow topics you care about, and much more. Download the app by searching for TYT in the App Store or via Google Play.
TYT, Cenk, and Anna with you guys. Anthony McClendon wrote in on Super Chat. That's it, Anna and Cenk. You listened to Trump's words and accurately described them. You're officially right-wingers now.
I mean, okay.
No, he's kidding.
No, I know. But okay. I'm sure that critique is in there somewhere.
Yeah, we'll do that later. But anyway, Jason Alea, thank you for gifting 5 Young Turks memberships. We appreciate you. And thank you to iPrevolt for joining on TYT.com/join. You guys are the best. Anna.
Well, I wanted to cover some international news, beginning with what's transpiring in Haiti. So let's get right to it. A crisis had already been unfolding in Haiti before criminal gangs took over the country in recent weeks. The country hasn't had an elected government for over a year. Its 43rd president, Jovenel Moïse, was assassinated on July 7th of 2021, and they hadn't elected a new president since then. And now, as I mentioned earlier, criminal gangs have taken over the country. And about a week ago, the prime minister of Haiti, Ariel Henry, stepped down with the hopes that it would squash the violence or at least calm down some of the violence that's being carried out by these gangs. Unfortunately, that has not been the case.
Extortion and kidnappings have become a common trade to finance the gangs. Since the assassination of the Haitian president in 2021, the country has been plunged even further into political chaos and insecurity. 80% of the capital today is controlled by criminal groups. Haitian police officers attempt to regain control of parts of the city.
Yeah, let's go.
In a bullet-riddled tank, this elite unit gears up for a face-off with a gang, making their way through Mariani, a neighborhood west of Port-au-Prince.
The residents here are desperate. The area has been occupied for some time by armed men, civilians. We're here to put them out of their misery.
Now, unfortunately, gang violence has been a bit of a mainstay in Haiti, but things really exploded while the prime minister was in Kenya. Now, hunger has already set in for Haitians who were already living in poverty, and fears of famine are growing in the failed state. 300,000 Haitians have been displaced from their homes, and half of those individuals happen to be children. The United States is also attempting to evacuate Americans from Haiti and managed to bring about 30 people home on chartered flights today. But getting to the airport has become nearly impossible for Americans who are stranded in Haiti because the gangs are blocking the roads. Here's more on that.
The situation for ordinary people remains dangerous, with police in the capital, Port-au-Prince, currently trying to arrest gang leader Jimmy Chirizier, known as Barbecue. Last week, the escalating violence forced the resignation of the Prime Minister, Ariel Henry, who had been out of the country trying to organize the deployment of an international security force to stabilize the country.
On Friday, the police was trying to access one of their bases for their specialized police units, and then you got it into a shootout with some of the gangs, and this continued into yesterday. This is a stronghold there. We're also hearing that private homes were also looted. We know that the gangs went back and attacked the seaport again. UNICEF is saying that they had a number of containers that have been looted. People have not been able to leave the capital because all roads outside of the capital are blocked by gangs. So this will benefit individuals who are in the north of the country, who are not in the capital, but the ones who really need to get out are those that are in Port-au-Prince, and we do not know how that is going to happen.
Now, in response to all of this violence, bloodshed, and suffering, apparently Caribbean leaders are forming the creation of a transitional government. It was supposed to have 7 members with voting powers, but one political party in Haiti rejected the seat that they were offered, and another is still apparently squabbling, according to the Associated Press, over who should be nominated. And meanwhile, the development of a UN-backed Kenyan police force to fight these gangs in Haiti has been delayed, with the East African country saying that it would wait until the transitional council is established. So how did we get here? Because obviously this didn't just come out of nowhere. This didn't just start a few weeks ago. This has been an ongoing issue. Haiti has dealt with a lot of historical events that got us to the place that we're in now. And luckily, to help us figure this all out is Wosny Lambre, obviously a friend and contributor to TYT and also from The Ringer. Woz, thank you for joining us.
No problem. Happy to be on with you guys.
So I've heard you cover Haiti on your podcasts, Woke Bros, or on other shows many times, and you always come correct with like this historical context that I think is important in understanding how we got to where we are today. So why don't we start with that? Talk a little bit about, Europeans colonizing, Haiti, the United States' role in what is transpiring in Haiti. I think it's all really relevant to help understand what's happening.
I mean, some people would say pretty much ever since the founding of the state, when Jean-Jacques Dessalines declared Haiti an independent state after they defeated the French in the Haitian Revolution. Pretty soon after that, he tried to redistribute the land amongst the peasants, and the Haitian elite conspired to have the guy assassinated, and they brought their Western betters back into the country. And that's basically been the lay of the land ever since. And at different times it's France, at different times it's been the US, at different times it's been the Clinton Foundation. But there's always been this influence from the Western powers within the islands, and it's always been in collaboration with the Haitian elites. Believe it or not, yes, Haiti is what they call the poorest country within the Western Hemisphere, but the Haitian oligarchs enjoy incredible amounts of wealth. We're talking about people who live in the mountains and have helipads on their freaking properties, right? And so they've always been the collaborators with their Western betters, and I think the situation on the ground right now is no different. For whatever reason, the Haitian elite decided that they didn't like what Moïse was doing, the former president who was assassinated, and they got him out of there. And it's hard for somebody like me to believe that they didn't do this with the tacit approval of the US State Department, because as you guys well know, nothing happens in our backyard without the State Department's approval. If you do things that they don't like, they will come and coup your behind. I will remind people back in 2004, the CIA backed a coup against President Aristide because, some people would say it's because he tried to raise the minimum wage in the freaking sweatshops from 25 cents to $1. Again, this is well documented. The CIA in America backed that coup. They've been destabilizing this country for decades, if not centuries, right? And so the current situation right now is just a manifestation of those realities.
Yeah, so I've read a little bit about the slave revolt that happened in Haiti that took over the country, and I think it's amazing, fascinating, and has had so many repercussions and reverberations, including basically it made America, and the reason is because it bankrupted the French that were speculating on the slave trade, and then they had to do the Louisiana Purchase for a song, and that allowed America to expand to the West. So it's just an amazing story overall. Now, having said that, now let's speed up to today. So I'm looking for good guys here, Waz, and I don't know if there are any. Okay.
No. So there are no good guys. There are the Haitian peasants who are basically getting grounded into freaking dust by this ruling elite and the Western powers. And then there's everybody else who is basically angling for power. Right. Some people, there are media outlets in Haiti that would call this guy Jimmy Barbecue Chalizier some type of revolutionary figure. For those of the viewers who don't know, this guy's a former cop. So he's a former agent of the state. And they basically backdoored this guy. They pinned an atrocity on him, and he's been waging war against the elites ever since. And, I won't lie, if you actually listen to some of his rhetoric, it's got some pretty socialist like bent to it, like revolutionary bent, where he's talking about, hey, these elites, these 5 families basically own the entire island. They hoard all the wealth, all of the resources, all of the aid. They've privatized everything into just freaking oblivion. And so the state, there is no state, there's no income. The last president, before he got assassinated, was in the process of privatizing the electric company and the ports. Those were basically the last 2 state sort of properties, and they privatized that, which means what? It just means so that some private actors can now profit off of it, and the state can't produce any sort of goods or services for its people. And by the way, this is the policy of our Western powers. This is neoliberalism realized to its furthest extent. Absolutely no state, a hollowed out state, and just private actors profiting hand over fist at every single turn.
So one thing that I was surprised to learn about as I was researching this story is the widespread use of criminal gangs by business interests and politicians in Haiti. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think what people need to understand, I guess in the media they call these guys gangs, but they should really be thinking of them more as paramilitary groups. These people come from the Haitian slums. Where the hell are they getting the money, the wherewithal to procure freaking AK-47s and all kind of guns and ammunition and assault weapons? Obviously, they're backed by people with actual financial means. And so for a long time, the different political elite factions and the business elite, they've hired out people in the slums to, essentially do their dirty work during elections. When they have to travel around the country, they've hired these people as a private security force. And, of course, this thing has no governance. There's no oversight. These same people go around terrorizing the citizenry. And how guys, that these people are empowered and employed by the Haitian elite is that everybody knows where the elite live. They know how they live. They know where they stay. Yet all of the gang activity is happening in the poorest parts of the capital city. It doesn't take criminology, 401 level to realize if you want to make some bread, you go where it's at, right? And so that's all you need to know about all of these gangs. They're all backed by the Haitian elite. Different factions of that elite, I should say.
Yeah, so when Israel was attacked on October 7th, they thought they were in peril. 5 months later, they still think they're in peril. So the Biden administration and Congress is trying to rush them $14 or $17 billion. So are they trying to get $14 billion to Haiti right now, $24 billion?
So here's the thing too about aid in a place like Haiti, because there's no government, because there is no state, there's no established order, right? There's no organizing principle of the land besides these, this gilded gentry class of people who own every single resource within the company. What would $14 billion in US aid even do over there, Cenk? Right. Who would they give it to? Who would be in charge of disseminating these goods? Like, there's no state to speak of, right? And so, yeah, obviously it's nasty what the state does when they hand billions upon billions of dollars to weapons manufacturers. Again, by the way, private companies, private actors, y'all. These are privately owned companies that get government checks to send weapons abroad, AKA we fatten the hell out of their bottom line so they can send weapons abroad. You can't really use that same logic. And also, the things that are happening on the ground in Haiti are happening because of US policy. I don't think anybody in the State Department is like, oh, our agenda won't be able to be carried out because the Haitian citizens are suffering. In fact, when they want to carry out this exploitative sort of way of retracting the cheap labor from the country, it's even better for those purposes, right? And so why would they go against an order that they've established themselves and that they themselves benefit from?
Yeah, so of course, I'm kidding about the 14 billion, and if we had intended to help Haiti, there was 100 different ways we could have done it in the past. And of course, we didn't choose to do that for the reasons that you were explaining here. And defense contractors don't have any money to make, etc. But my last question is, if we were good guys and we wanted to help Haiti as in America, right? Is there anything we could do? Given that helping the paramilitary groups doesn't seem like a good idea, the government's a mess. So is there any way that America could help if it wanted to?
I think what Haiti needs right now is a vast sort of infrastructural undertaking. If America wanted to be a great ally and partner, they would invest very heavily in building up the actual infrastructure of the company. You know, sewage, roads. We're talking about the basics here. An electrical grid. That would be the nicest thing the West could do, would actually go about building up a place so that this could be a livable place for the masses of poor and impoverished Haitians. And I will repeat this. The people who actually own the island live like kings and queens. And they do that by exploiting the peasantry. How America, which again, they would never do, would be investment on an infrastructural level. And then of course, you know, allowing these people to build up a state, build up a way to, you know, fund goods and services for its people. That would be the ultimate goal of a benevolent, you know, West. But I mean, that seems like a long shot at this point.
Yeah, especially when you consider that, you know, the US did to Haiti what it did to many Latin American countries in backing a dictatorial regime back in the 1950s, 1957 with Francois Duvalier. So look, it'd be amazing if the US actually changed gears for once and did something positive on behalf of Haiti. I'm not gonna hold my breath though. Now, Waz, we're out of time, but thank you so much for taking time to talk with us. Hopefully you'll come back because this isn't a story that's gonna go away anytime soon. Thank you again. Everyone go check out Waz over at The Ringer. And again, thank you. I appreciate you taking the time. We're gonna take a quick break. When we come back, we've got more news for you all, including apparently Donald Trump too broke to pay his bond in the financial fraud case. We've got that story and more. Don't miss it.
Social break here. Let me go to our members on TYT.com. Teddy Cool says, never thought I'd ever say this, but I'm actually looking forward to a Don Lemon interview. Hey, he's a guest on the show. Cool it. Teddy Cool. All right, there's more where that came from. ACGC says, happy TYT Monday Live. Really looking forward to the Don Lemon interview. I'm not saying I'm kind of looking forward to the reversing of the tables because Don is no longer on CNN, but it is always nice when mainstream media figures are interviewed by our progressive stalwarts, Cenk and Anna, who we know will not pull their punches in the name of conventional decorum. And look, knowing Don a little bit, he's not a fan of that either, as you could tell from the Elon Musk interview. So we'll, as always, have a productive conversation. Navinex says, is Don Lemon gonna spill the lemonade, if you will? What do you mean? Which is also kind of a thing, but anyway, I liked it. Eclectic Miscellaneous says, thank you very much, Anna and Cenk, for correcting the record about the bloodbath for the country, quote. I fell for the media's spin until I read the full context of that part of his speech. Trump says enough horrible, disgusting things without very clearly misrepresenting what he said. Look at that. Not only the fairest show in America, the fairest audience in America. Zaphon Beeblebrox, obviously, says definitely out of context, but the tariff is not a good policy idea. The Dems should have ran with that. That kind of tariff would be detrimental economically. Exactly what I said in the video I did right after the speech. I'm like, 100% tariff is comical, ridiculous, insane, and that's the thing you could actually criticize him on. But all that opportunity was largely missed. Worst case scenario, Dragon says, even if it's Trump, you need to be honest. Exactly right. Jazz Maven, aka Kind Blue Dragon says, or Kinda Blue Dragon says, regardless of the context, use of the language bloodbath in reference to Drumpf not being elected is a reckless choice of words at best. I agree, he should be very careful with that kind of language. He is not at all careful. As told by Chris Wilson writes in, Thursday's show really had an impact on me. When you guys talk about how 576,000 people are starving in Gaza right now, that's the equivalent of the population of Brevard County, Florida, where I live. It really puts things into perspective when you apply the circumstances to your life, and more people should. Yep. Absolutely criminal and shameful. Totally right, we've got updates on that. I had the misfortune of debating Rabbi Shmuley Batank again. They pulled a switcheroo on me. Anyway, on that Piers Morgan, you'll see more of that too. All right, we'll be back. Back on TYT, Cenk Anna, Neurodivergent Dragon, and Samuel Sherrell. So you guys are awesome. Thanks for joining. They hit the join button below, and you could upgrade through that too. We need it. And Anthony McClinton gifted 5, and David Bergen gifted 5 Young Turks memberships as well. You guys are the best. Casper.
We've got an update on Donald Trump's legal woes, and this one is a doozy.
Judge Engoron says that he wants this $350 million within 30 days. Now, I know that you're planning on appealing this, but you've still got to put up the full amount pending that appeal. Does Donald Trump have that kind of money sitting around?
Yes. I mean, he does. Of course, he has money. You know, he's a billionaire. We know that.
Well, contrary to what Trump attorney Alina Habba stated there, it seems like Trump will be unable to make his $464 million bond in his New York civil fraud case. And that's not for lack of trying. So in a court filing, Trump's lawyers wrote, defendants' ongoing diligent efforts have proven that a bond in the judgment's full amount is a practical impossibility. These diligent efforts have included approaching about 30 surety companies through 4 separate brokers. So Cenk, I'm gonna bring you in as the fancy guy with the fancy Columbia law degree. What does surety mean?
Okay, not a big deal. Okay, look, let me explain it more broadly. So if he can't put up the bond, why is he trying so hard to put this bond up? And he did it in the E. Jean Carroll case as well, because he never listens to the law, he never follows anything. There's a very good reason why. Because if you don't put up that kind of money, then the Letitia James can start selling your properties. Now, if she starts selling the properties, he's in a world of trouble for a great number of reasons. Number one, he's not gonna have a source of income anymore. And number 2, they might have to do distress sales, which will bring you less value than if you sold at your peak. So there's a great number of reasons why he's in a cold sweat panic here. And again, I might surprise you guys a little bit here. I think that he has an interesting case in terms of waiting till appeal to do that last drastic step. But for sure, and then I'll get into my commentary about the lawyer, etc. He was never a billionaire, and now you're finding out, yeah, he doesn't have the money, for sure.
I think I'm ready for you all to hate me, because I'm gonna say something that will make you hate me. I think this all goes way too far. Way too far, okay? Guys, look, it was a civil case. Yes, he lied about the value of his assets, and there should be punishment for that, because we would all have to face punishment if we lied to the banks about the value of our assets in order to, secure loans or insurance. That's what he did here. Don't you think this goes a little too far? Like, he paid all of those banks back.
No, it depends. Look, so I'm not positive about the amount because I'm not the judge in the case and I didn't see all the data that they went through. But I want to tell you what that was so that you get a sense of the context.
Okay, go ahead.
So if you just said randomly, hey, give me $400 million because I didn't like the fraud that you committed, etc. Yeah, that's a giant number, and I would say that goes way too far, right?
You have to prove damages, though, don't you?
Yes, but they did. So
what are the damages?
Yeah, here's the damages. So number one, when you apply for a loan, you're going to get, based on your collateral and based on what you've stated, you're going to get different interest rates. And so whether you take the loan and you pay it back is not the only material thing. So if an interest rate is 14%, which is super high as it was for Trump when he bought the Taj Mahal in Atlantic City, you're much more likely to run into trouble, go bankrupt, etc. But the lender is more likely to make money because he's charging a 14% interest rate.
Okay.
So if you charge a 2% interest rate, you get it, right? And so they did the math during the trial on how much he saved by lying about his properties and hence his collateral. So that's the money, extra money that he cost the banks, because even if they gave him the loan, they would have charged a higher interest rate and it would have equaled this much. Now Trump lies so often, commits so much fraud that he's made 50 million here, 30 million there, 400 million there from all these different frauds that he's run. And you can tell, and they proved, hey, here's what he said was the value of the property in one instance, here's what he said in another instance, and it doesn't match at all, and here's the real value of the property. So they did real homework and real adjudication of this case.
So the problem is, or let me reframe that, the damages that were proven were the damages in that the banks didn't make more money off of him through a higher interest that they could have charged him if he was more honest about the value of his assets.
Yeah, that's a fair way of putting it.
Okay, I just want to also note for the record that while we got this massive judgment in a civil case pertaining to the poor banks and the damages that they have suffered, the American people have still not received any of the money that they're owed as a result of the damages that Trump caused by skirting his taxes.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's a great point.
No rush when it comes to that. When it comes to skirting your tax liabilities and responsibilities, which hurts the American people, of course. No rush in a judgment for that. But the poor banks.
But by the way, that you're not wrong that that's part of the reason why he's facing such stiff penalties here, because like we've said many times, who's the one guy who went to jail among the rich? Bernie Madoff. What was his crime? Robbing other rich people. Actually, there was a second guy, it was a Goldman Sachs executive, because he was robbing other Goldman Sachs executives, right? So that's the only crime in America that you'll get punished for in terms of white collar crime. Okay, and I'll expand on what you're saying. We did a backdoor bailout of AIG and Goldman Sachs during 2008. We printed trillions of dollars, gave it to the bankers, etc. Now, normally when you bail out a company in a private context, in capitalism, you get the returns once you bail them out. You own either a giant chunk of it or the entirety of it. The American taxpayers bailed out all those banks, all those insurance companies, etc. We should have, you know how much we're owed? We're owed trillions and trillions of dollars for those bailouts. We're never going to get that. No one's ever going to mention that, etc. So all of those things are true, but nevertheless, in this particular case, they were correct about Trump. He did commit fraud. It did cost this much, and they added more money because of the back interest that he owes on the money he would have had to pay back then, etc. And if Trump didn't like it, then he shouldn't have committed massive fraud. And by the way, I don't shed any tears for him because this is only one case. In reality, he committed this kind of fraud dozens of times in his career and got away with it every single time, because back then he was part of the elites and you never get prosecuted if you're part of the elites. Now that he's a little anti-establishment, all of a sudden a prosecution. So we're super fair. If you're MAGA and you're like, oh, I bet he wouldn't have been prosecuted if it wasn't for politics. Probably.
Yeah, I totally agree
because
with
he was
that
super rich, and they always let the super rich get away with it.
By the way, I think that this case, I mean, I actually see it as a good thing. This case is gonna open the floodgates because now a precedent has been set where a politically motivated civil suit has led to Trump having to pay this massive amount of money, right? And he might not have the money, and it might lead to a complete financial disaster for him, and we'll get to those details in just a second. But you think Republicans aren't going to turn around and try Democrats that they are alleging of, blowing up their assets or the value of their assets to something that's unrealistic and not based on any merit?
Well, so look, so there's two ways that can go. And one is absolutely disastrous, and the other is actually kind of fantastic. So if Trump gets into office and does what he's threatening to do, and he did it again today, he said Cassidy Hutchinson, who used to work in his administration, he said she should be arrested and put in jail. Why? Because she testified against him and said things that were true.
She's such a clown.
Right, so if he goes in that direction where he starts putting people in jail for disagreeing with him politically, he's a monster, a dictator, etc. It'll be the worst thing that ever happened. But if they instead they don't do that and they go, oh yeah, okay, let's look at all the Democrats and all their connected buddies and how many times they committed fraud, and they pursue them through civil proceedings and then get that money back to the American taxpayer. A, that would be fantastic. B, it would make them populist heroes and make him incredibly popular, right?
Yep.
But Trump's not gonna do that. He doesn't, and part of the reason is he is among the elites. He loves those other rich guys and he wants their money and he wants their support. So he's gonna try to put his political opponents in jail unjustly, and he's not gonna pursue them through the courts like this. But if he did, he wouldn't be wrong. I would love to have both Democrats, Republicans, whoever actually committed fraud to be prosecuted as Trump was here.
So
tried.
Going back to his inability to pay that massive $464 million bond, keep in mind that in a deposition just last year, Trump testified that he had $400 million in cash. It appears that that is not necessarily the case. The lawyers also noted that bond companies typically require collateral of approximately 120% of the amount of the judgment, which would total about $557 million. That's a lot of money. In addition, sureties would likely charge bond premiums of approximately 2% per year with 2 years in advance, an upfront cost of over $18 million, the filing said. The $18 million also would not be recoverable even if Trump wins his appeal. However, Trump's lawyers insist that Trump's real estate holdings actually exceed the amount that he needs to pay. But to your point, Cenk, he doesn't want to sell those properties, right? And even if he were to be in favor of selling those properties, it's not as easy as selling a single family residential home in a super limited inventory housing market. We're talking about complicated real estate holdings that would require very complicated sales. And then the bond companies don't accept Trump's hard assets, such as real estate, as collateral. Right, so that wouldn't work as collateral if he's planning on doing that. So Trump has asked a New York appellate court to waive the bond requirement while he appeals the judgment, arguing that paying now would cause him irreparable harm. If the court turns down his request and he is unable to obtain a bond, New York Attorney General Letitia James, who sued Trump in 2022, could begin enforcing the judgment at the beginning of next week. And she has previously stated that she will look to seize Trump's assets if he cannot come up with the money himself.
Yeah, so look, the lawyer in the beginning saying, yes, he's a billionaire, yes, he has the cash, is so counterproductive. Trump saying he has the $400 million in cash is so counterproductive to their legal claims. Why do they do it? Because Trump's whole image is built on, I'm super rich, I'm so successful, I'm such a great businessman. So he doesn't want to admit that he's a failure and he doesn't have this kind of money, and he never has. He's been lying the entire time. But in terms of what's right and fair, we can't have one set of rules for Trump and another set of rules for everyone else. And to me, putting up all the cash up front before you appeal the case seems draconian for everyone, not just Trump, right? And it's white collar crime. Look, I want it punished maximum. And if he loses the appeal, damn right, sell all your properties and pay up, okay? But what if he wins the appeal? So you made him sell all of his properties to get the collateral, but then he can't buy them back. And if he had to sell them in a fire sale, so when his lawyer says irreparable harm, in this case, financially speaking, it would be irreparable harm. So I think that the system should allow for using collateral, but not Trump's inflated nonsense numbers, but actual judgment of what those properties are worth.
Agreed.
And then if he loses the appeal, they take the properties. But if he doesn't lose the appeal, he gets the properties back. And that's fair. Making him sell all of it up front before the appeal is decided, it is the law, but it doesn't seem quite fair.
All right, we're gonna take a break. When we come back, Don Lemon will be joining us to talk about his new show and his bit of a tiff with Elon Musk. Don't miss it.
Let's see how Earth responds to that.
Every day, the Young Turks delivers 2 hours of solid, fact-based, timely news and progressive commentary on all the day's most important stories. We keep our viewers informed while also providing perspective and insight on the news we cover, so you understand not only what's happening, but also what's happening behind the scenes, the stories behind the stories.
We play musical chairs and put these children in one awful detention facility to the next. That's what's happening at the border.
The things that got him banned, he's still spreading. So presumably, I think it's reasonable to say that if you allow him back on the website, he's going to do it again.
Any legal voter that we deem not willing to vote for my side shouldn't vote because it'll replace me that's supposed to vote for my side. That's not how voting works. That's not how democracy works.
And while many people following today's political news can get discouraged about the direction of the nation and the world, that's not us. At TYT, we're genuinely optimistic about the future, and with good reason. Today, wide majorities of Americans agree with our progressive stances on issues ranging from healthcare and education to climate, immigration, and wages. The rising generation of young people are also overwhelmingly progressive in their political beliefs and policy objectives, and they're increasingly flexing their muscle as voters and activists to demand change from our elected officials. The traditional mainstream media is mostly AWOL. They, along with the government and many other cherished institutions, have been captured by corporate interests. Audiences sense that they're not getting the whole story or even the truth from once trusted outlets, whether broadcasting cable TV news networks or national newspapers and magazines. The antidote is the Young Turks. Unlike mainstream corporate outlets, we're not beholden to corporate advertisers, to defense contractors, to Wall Street, or to Big Pharma, and we don't carry water for the Republican or Democratic parties. So watch us Monday through Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific, and join the thousands of progressives around the globe who tune in every day for TYT's unmatched, award-winning content and see what it's like to experience a news organization that only answers to you.
I don't care if you're Christian. In fact, I will fight for you to have your religious liberty and practice your Christianity. I believe in that. I don't believe in Christianity, which means that you do not get to dictate the way I live my life based on your religion. I don't care what the Bible says. You have every right in the world. All those women who identify with your religion have every right in the world to not get an abortion, to not take birth control, but they do not have the right to dictate my life and what I decide to do with my body. I don't care about your goddamn religion. I'm so tired of having nonstop conversations about what the Bible says. You live your life in the way that you interpret the Bible. Again, I don't care, but you don't get to take the Bible and tell me, well, the Bible says this in this chapter, in this verse. I don't care. I don't care, I don't believe in it, and I have the right, based on our Constitution, to not believe in it.
Join the Dragon Squad by becoming a YouTube channel member. Click the join button below or sign up on tyt.com/join to get access to fun emojis, a member-only chat, exclusive shop TYT designs, ad-free watching, and so many other amazing perks. Plus, you get bragging rights for being part of the coolest community on the internet and help us drive real positive change in the world. The Dragon Squad awaits, so join today.
The media can't stop talking about gridlock in Washington as if a handful of stubborn Republicans are the only thing standing between us and a fully functional democracy. The reality is that our government was taken over by big business and their allies in both political parties. And corporate media adds to the dysfunction. The good news is that the American people are progressive and soon will take over Washington. My book, Justice is Coming, is our battle plan for making that happen. You can get Justice is Coming wherever books and audiobooks are sold.
Back on the Young Turks, Cenk Uygur, sparing with you guys. We're going to talk to Don Lemon in a second about his controversial interview with Elon Musk. Let's take a quick look at a quick piece of it.
Contrary to what you might have heard, we weren't canceled by X. Yes, after months of begging me, wooing me to offer some exclusive content on his platform, Elon Musk decided to scrap the deal. But our plan is, and always has been, to release this show everywhere. And I challenge you, Elon, to watch the whole interview and tell the world why this isn't what you claim you want on X.
So we did watch the whole interview. Don Lemon, of course, now has his own show, and you can find it at youtube.com/The Don Lemon Show. And I thought it was more aggressive than Don said it was. And I found myself at times a little bit sympathetic to Elon Musk, which I was surprised by. So we're going to talk to Don about that. And let's bring him in now. Don, good to have you on the Young Turks.
Thank you, Cenk. It's good to be on. I appreciate you guys doing it. Hi, Anna.
Hi, Don. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
Yeah. So I want to ask you about the substance of the interview in 1 second. But first, Anna's got a question for you.
I have a question that I hope you don't take any offense to, but it's the number one.
You can ask me anything.
It's the number one thing I'm deeply, deeply curious about. So let's quickly just go to this graphic because it explains the heart of my question here. So sources exclusively tell The Wrap that Lemon has agreed to a separation deal with CNN for approximately $24.5 million, which would be the full complete pay from his final contract, which extended 3.5 years from his ousting. Okay, so why are you not in Sorrento right now? Like,
or on the Amalfi Coast, as
yes.
If I don't watch you. I went to the Amalfi Coast this summer. Anna, I went to Italy twice this summer. People invited me on their boats. I took extravagant, great vacations because I was taking time off, honestly, to try to, plot my next plan, to figure out what I'm going to do. I even met with Cenk at a restaurant in Soho, I think, to talk about my next move. So,
but Don,
are you telling?
You're a free man, Don. You're a free man. Okay, you don't have to work for a living like we do, okay? You don't have to consume another minute of the news or report another minute of the news. You can be in Sorrento right now, free of all of it. Yeah. But you know what? I give you credit for being passionate enough about this, line of work that you want to keep torturing yourself with it. But I just needed to know.
Yeah, I didn't think that you were telling me to shut up and dribble, right?
No, of course not. No, it's a difficult and challenging job that's made even more difficult and challenging when you consider the changing business landscape associated with journalism. So,
yeah, I want to get back to that. Yeah,
and I sat down just quickly. I sat down with Cenk and we talked about that, and that's one of the reasons that I am not actively pursuing or have not actively pursued employment in traditional media. It's this is the future of the medium that I'm used to, and I'm going to lean into that. So I'm happy to be here and trying new things on your territory. This is your territory.
Yeah, so we'll talk about that in a second. So let's do the heart of the interview. So Don, I saw you're talking to other folks, went on Aaron Burnett's show on CNN, et cetera. It was good to see you back on CNN. And you appear to be very surprised at Elon Musk's reaction. But after watching the interview, I wasn't that surprised. I was wondering when he got angry, and I thought before I watched the interview, and I thought maybe when you brought up ketamine or something, but he seemed like he was perfectly okay with that. It's when you started talking about DEI and the Great Replacement Theory. And Don, you spent a lot of time on that. And I like aggressive interviews and I like follow-up questions, but you had a ton of follow-up questions and you were very tough and aggressive. So I wound up thinking that I was surprised that you were surprised that he had a negative reaction to it, especially given Elon Musk. Didn't you think that interview was very aggressive?
Well, first of all, I didn't think it was very aggressive, and I wasn't surprised that Elon Musk was that. I'm surprised that he became upset by it, because Elon Musk is a grown man. He is a multi-billionaire. He is in charge of very important things in the world. And he has also put out into the world, especially through his social media site, some very negative things, which is he can do it if he wants, it's his site. But I wanted to know if he felt any responsibility to that. Not only does he put those things out, some of them go against his own content policy rules. And some of them are not factual. Many of them are not factual, and some are racist and anti-Semitic. So any journalist worth their salt would ask him about those things and follow up. And I think that's what I did. I don't think the interview was aggressive at all. I never raised my voice in the interview. I simply asked him questions and I followed up.
One of the things that you took him to task on was the advertisers that have since left the platform ever since he took over. There are multiple reasons why they've left, but apparently Elon Musk doesn't want to take any responsibility for his business choices, essentially shooing some of these advertisers away. So I wanted to go to that portion of the interview just so our audience can see what we're talking about when we talk about how aggressive you were in that interview, which I think is a good thing. I prefer that over milquetoast, boring, pandering questions. But nonetheless, let's take a quick look at that portion.
So you said if they kill the company, it's them, but doesn't the buck stop with you? I mean, you're on it.
I have to say, choose your question carefully. There's 5 minutes left.
Okay, but so
is this the question you want to ask?
The same question is you said that they are killing the company, but you're the head of the company. The buck doesn't stop with you?
I acquired X in order to preserve freedom of speech in America, the First Amendment. And I'm going to stick to that. And if that means making less money, so be it.
So I have to listen, I'm just being honest, right? I'm not trying to get you or anything. I was just surprised that you would blame other people for killing the company. I mean, when you say the buck stops with the president of the United States, regardless of what happens, right? So why would that question upset you? You seem upset by it, are you?
I think
and I'm not trying to upset you.
Well, you are upsetting me because the way you're phrasing the questions, I think, is not cogent.
I thought it was rather cogent, and he looks incredibly upset. Were you afraid for your safety at any moment during that interview? Because it looked like he was ready to murder you.
No, he did have some big security guards, some big dudes around him. No, I wasn't afraid for my safety. And listen, I have interviewed all kinds of people. Yeah, I always say I've interviewed presidents to convicts to, just all kinds of people. Many people who I disagree with. I've had many tough interviews. I've never had someone this sensitive. And I actually agree with Cenk. I didn't feel sorry for him during the interview. I'm not, there's nothing to feel sorry for him about. Elon Musk has a good life. He said he had a hard life as a childhood. So did I. So did many people. But I did feel some empathy for him because I thought that he has a lot on his plate. I mentioned that in the interview. And I think that he is uncomfortable with people challenging him and presenting him with facts. And I think that he is, in my opinion, a bit emotionally immature, or maybe a bit emotionally vulnerable might be a better way of putting it. So I did empathize with him in a way, but my intention was not to have a gotcha interview or to get him. It was to allow him to be able to speak. They said they wanted at least an hour, which is what we granted them, because I don't like sound bites, and I said that in the beginning, so I was glad about that, to get to know him. And that's all it was. So, all of the talking he did himself.
Yeah. So, by the way, you can watch the whole interview again at youtube.com/The Don Lemon Show. Don, I wanted to follow up on that though, because sometimes I got frustrated in the interview because I felt like you guys were talking past each other, to be honest. And
we were right on. You're right on about that. We were right. Yes, go on. Finish your question. I'm sorry.
So on the issue of advertisers, free speech, moderation, censorship, I want to get your thoughts on it because you're the one here and you had a really interesting set of questions for him and you kind of debated him back and forth on it. So look, I think he's oftentimes inarticulate. That's not his strength. But let's start with advertisers. I think that he makes an interesting point there, which is advertisers get to control everything that goes on these platforms. And I think that people don't understand the power of advertisers. So even though he's wrong on the substance of, I think he's wrong on the substance of what he's getting in a beef with the advertisers over, right? He's not wrong that they set all of the rules, and he is doing a bit of a rebellion against what is ironically their conservative nature, not in terms of politics, but in terms of how they conduct their business. So the example I'll give you is that oftentimes on different social media platforms, discussion, and you'll see this now that you're on digital media, discussions of whether someone is saying something racist or someone is combating racism are blocked because advertisers say, I don't want any piece of it, it's controversial, I don't want plus, I don't want negative, I don't want it at all. And you saw what happened with Bud Light and the trans controversy, et cetera. So advertisers say, if you're having interesting conversations, we will block it. So he's not exactly wrong about that. So what's your take on that position? Maybe articulate it a little bit better.
No, I think you're right. I think, listen, I've learned a lot with this. That wasn't my question to him though, but just on what you just said, I think you're right. I find that people don't want to advertise around politics. You know that, Cenk. They don't want to advertise around news. They're very hesitant to do that because they don't want to take a position. They don't want something to happen to them like what happened with Bud Light or any other, company that has taken a stance and has faced some sort of boycott. That is unfortunate. I don't agree with that. I think that they should be advertising around these things because it's very important for our electorate and Americans and people all over the world to be educated and to know what they're voting for. And I think it is important for companies to take stances and to stand up for misinformation, to stand up against misinformation, stand up against conspiracy theorists, to stand up against insurrectionists, to stand up against people who are election deniers. So I think that is very important, and I understand that. And so if someone is concerned about that on this side of the camera that we're on, then perhaps maybe they want to change what they do. But my whole point of it is whether you or I, Cenk, agree with that, that is that advertiser's freedom of speech or freedom of expression. They don't want to advertise on your program. That is their right. They don't have to. We don't like it. I don't like it. You don't like it. He doesn't like it, but that is their right. So you simply can't say, I believe in freedom of speech, except for the freedom of speech of these advertisers. That would be hypocritical.
Yeah.
And so it's not the advertiser's fault that they're not advertising on his platform. It's his fault. And so he has to figure out how to entice those advertisers or whatever in his own business, as you or I would. It's unfortunate, but that's their right.
Yeah, I agree with only 2/3 of that. Okay, so I agree that it's definitely the advertiser's right. They have the freedom of speech as well, no question about that. And
you can figure out how to change it. There are things that we can do to figure out how to change that.
Right.
There are things that we can do to appeal to people's, the better nature of advertisers, which is tough because that's only about making money. That's all they want to do.
Yeah. And I agree with you that the buck stops with leadership. And so I run this network, and it's my job to make sure that it's sustainable given the landscape that we're in. So, and if you don't like the landscape, sad day, but it is what it is, and you have to survive and you have to make do. But he is leading a bit of a rebellion against the advertiser ideology that you must agree with their positions, otherwise they will not advertise with you. And that part I respect a little bit, but I want to go to the-
I do too. I agree with you 100%. When I saw him at DealBook, I was like, wow, that is really, of him. I can say ballsy, that's not a curse word, of him to do that.
Yeah.
To stand up to those advertisers that way and put his business in jeopardy. But again, that's him saying that. It's not the advertisers. They just decided not to advertise on that platform.
Yeah, I totally
agree with you. I think that he's making a very good point, and I wish we all had that amount of money where we could stand up for advertisers, against advertisers who do the things that you're saying.
And he does, so he gets to do it, right? Because he's the richest man in the world. And so, okay.
But that wasn't part of our conversation.
No, I totally agree. That's why I brought it up here. And so I wanted to go to the free speech versus moderation versus censorship. Because again, there I felt like you guys were talking past each other a little bit. So look, I think almost everyone gets, you can't be absolutist on free speech and you can't be absolutist on censorship, right? So, and he is hypocritical because he kept telling you, well, we allow these hateful things on the platform, but we don't serve it up to people as much. Well, then I could argue that's a form of censorship, right? And so he never addressed that. But on the other hand, Don, you showed like some terrible cartoons, as you were doing, the Jewish stereotypes, and they're awful, et cetera. And so it's easy to look at that and say, well, you should ban that, right? But isn't it much, much harder than that? Because the question is, where are the lines? So for example, Ben Shapiro, in 2010 said that Arabs like to bomb crap and live in open sewage. It's a horribly hateful thing to say. There's no accountability for it, etc. But I don't mind that he said it, because then at least I know where he stands. And I've been called every name in the book in terms of my Muslim background, Turkish background, let alone everything else. But I want to cheat towards more freedom and not less, because I don't mind the battle of ideas. And I don't even mind if they say it in an offensive or horrible way, because at least I know where they stand. So it's definitely something that is not in the extremes, and it's not binary. But when you get into the hard middle of how to decide that, can you see why allowing for what some would call hate speech could, as long as it's legal, as he kept emphasizing, maybe is not such a wrong way to go? You see what I'm saying?
Yes and no. Because listen, before I came on, your producers reminded me not to curse, right? So that's a form of moderation, moderating your platform, and I am respectful of that. And so Ben Shapiro and Elon Musk are two different entities. Elon Musk owns one of the biggest social media and information platforms in the world. Ben Shapiro does not do that. Ben Shapiro has an agenda as a talk show host, as an advocate for Jewish people, as an activist. That is a completely different thing. Elon Musk is responsible for not only for the content that goes on that platform, for the business of that platform, for the employees who may or may not have a job on that platform, but also for the people who are at Tesla, for a big portion of the auto industry, for the economy in this country as it relates to the auto industry, as it relates to batteries, as it relates to solar powered, or electric cars or whatever, as it relates to rockets and that go up into space, as it relates to satellites. He is a very consequential person in the country. And what he says, a lot of people listen to. The context of the questions that I was asking him about, it was about hate speech. Now, if you don't want someone to say a cuss word on your platform, then you shouldn't be allowing people to put hate speech and hate propaganda on a platform. And it doesn't matter how many times it is out there, if you suppress it, which I want to get into that, it only takes one person. It only takes one Buffalo shooter. It only takes one synagogue shooter. It only takes one person shooting at immigrants who are crossing the border. It only takes one person, especially when you look at the manifestos of those people, and they tell you, the ones who do survive and they don't get killed by, in a shootout by police or the SWAT team, they will tell you, or even through their manifestos or personally, they were radicalized by information that they saw on social media. So what is the responsibility for someone who owns one of the biggest social media platforms in the world? You have no responsibility to even abide by the own rules that you set on your own platform. If you say, okay, that stuff gets by and we take it down, the stuff that we had been up there for months. And so if your own content policy says that is against your content rules, why is it still up there? That was my question. The other thing is, don't you feel any responsibility as someone of consequence? I respect Elon Musk a lot for what he has accomplished, but everyone at some point has responsibility for what they put out into the world and what they do. And so when you do something on this platform, Cenk, the buck stops with Cenk. When I do something, the buck stops with me. When Anna does something, the buck stops with her. Same as with the President of the United States. When a producer or someone, when I was on cable news, or a writer got something wrong and it came out of my mouth, you know who took responsibility for it? Me. I didn't throw someone under the bus or say, well, it's just out there and there's a lot of stuff that comes through and everything I can't do whatever. No, I'm sorry, viewers, that got out to you. It was offensive. I know it was. It hurt some people and it can possibly lead to violence and even death. I apologize for that. It won't happen again. End of story.
Yeah. So I hear you 100%. I think the devil's in the details, because the real answer to the question you asked him of why aren't you doing your own content policies, because he fired 3/4 of his staff, and that's why he's not doing it, right?
Yeah.
But nevertheless,
but for free speech, I agree with you. I'm going to fight for your right to be able to say it. If you're going to have, if you're going to be totally free speech, then be totally free speech. Don't have content policies.
Yeah.
Say it is a free for all. It's a wild, wild west. We let everybody go as long as it's not illegal. I'm sorry, that's how I feel. But don't be hemming and hawing doing this, trying to appease their advertisers, trying to do that. No.
Yeah.
You know.
So
by your own rules.
Yeah, and there's so much nuance here too that we'll have to pick back up, because, like for example, I think what the tweet that I mentioned of Ben Shapiro's, I think was definitely hateful and hate speech, but I would have allowed it. And so that's a super interesting conversation. I almost, after watching the interview, I wanted to almost moderate a debate on race, which is a whole different topic between you and Elon. Because again, you guys
let's do it.
Yeah, I mean, that would be amazing, and I would love it. But I have time for only one last question here, which is what I promised in the beginning. Look, when I was on MSNBC, all I had to do was beat Chris Matthews by one viewer, and I was a hero, right? Because he was my lead-in. And so I thought it was relatively easy. Digital media is super hard, and so because you've got to build the audience from the ground up. So I know you're just getting started here. I heard you said now I got to be more of an entrepreneur on the Pivot podcast with Kara Swisher and Galloway, and I think that's exactly right. So as you start here, how difficult have you found digital media to be versus TV?
It's a lot more difficult, but it's way more fun and it's way more authentic. I mean, I think if you listen to Pivot, I said the system that I was in is akin to the old Hollywood system where they had stars and talent, and they took care of you, and you had a contract, and you did this, and so many. I get to moderate so many debates and election season, and all of that is built in. This is all us and all me, and it is more organic, and it's really, I find it to be more challenging but more rewarding, because it's actual people who are really interested in authenticity. And I'm trying to figure out how to navigate that. I'm learning a lot. I think I'm doing really well, considering the amount of people who have watched the first episode of the Don Lemon Show on YouTube. I think I feel like I'm successful already, and look, with the small team that I have, and I'm sure you probably have a bigger team than I have because you've been doing this for a long time. But the small team that I have, what we've done over the last couple of weeks, even before Elon Musk canceled our contract, I think it's just been extraordinary, and I couldn't be happier with what's happening right now. And I'm happy to be on your program. I hope to be on here again debating the issues with you guys.
I love it, Don. Let me just say, I mean, look. This industry is an incredibly difficult one, but what makes doing this job here at TYT worth it is that none of us are muzzled, and we get to take the show in whatever direction we see fit. And that's so liberating, and it makes the job a lot better. Okay, so I'm actually excited for you. Let it all loose, let it go. Do the show that you've always dreamed of doing, because there's no one in your way stopping you. And that's just, again, the most liberating thing in this profession. So big ups to you, and keep asking those tough questions, because that eventually will grow a brand that I think will have a lot of lasting power. So anyway, thank you for joining us. Yeah. Thank you.
And tell Jane, stop being so hard on me, and maybe we'll go to the Amalfi Coast this summer. Me and you, not Jane.
Forget about him.
But by the way, Elon, you notice he didn't walk out? Okay, that's how you do an interview. All right, everybody check out the interview that Don did with Elon Musk. It's at youtube.com/The Don Lemon Show. Don, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it. Welcome.
Thank you, guys.
Welcome to the internet.
Thanks.
Okay.
All right, everyone, we're gonna take a brief break. When we come back, we've got more news for you, including Benjamin Netanyahu's response to Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer's speech on the Senate floor last week, calling for new elections in Israel to oust Netanyahu. That story's a spicy one, don't miss it, we'll be right back.
All right, back on TYT. Let's do member comments as always. Next TYT reporter writes in, you don't have to answer the questions, Elon, no one does, but people also don't have to support you or use your platform. You are looking really sus. Yes, well, Elon Musk does look sus in a lot of different ways. But, I thought he said some interesting things on there too. So anyway, really good interview by Don, check it out. Super Ken one said, this interview, referring to the one we just had, is one of the best I've ever seen in my 15 years being a TYT member. Wow, thank you, really appreciate that. Art Guy said, billionaires live in a bubble of people who say that, who say what they want to hear, so they develop a much thinner skin than the rest of us. Absolutely right. One of the other things that I got out of that interview was Don treated him as if he was out of power. He gave him what I call the Ricky Williams treatment, when Mike Wallace leveled Ricky Williams because he had no power at all. At that point, he was out of the league, etc. But when people are in power, people usually soft pedal them. And Elon was expecting an in-power interview, and he got an out-of-power interview, and that's what really set him off.
You love to see it.
Yes, we love to see it. Okay, so now let's go to Super Chat for a second. Jonathan Feliciano said, let's do a big monster gift to TYT to get our massive progressive voice alive. Well, who doesn't love that idea? Thank you, Jonathan.
I like gifts.
Yeah. So, by the way, if you want to, we just talked about how tough digital media is, and it is brutal. I saw Vox's building the other day. I think we're the only two companies left alive. So, anyways, tyt.com/join. Not only can you become a member, but you could also give a gift there. And that's the best way to give if you can. So tyt.com/join. But we appreciate you, John. That's beautiful of you to say. And Camilo Casas writes in, today's episode, banger. Okay, that's funny. And I love when, KE, thank you for joining. Jesse wrote in, actually, thank you for donating, I should say. Jesse wrote in, if Elon would have responded with a healthier temper then people would still be accusing Don Lemon as being too aggressive. Would they be accusing him of being too aggressive? Look, I watched it. I'm not saying aggressive is a bad word.
No, it's a good thing.
Right.
I like that.
But I thought he was very aggressive. Yes, he said it in a hushed tone, but he pressed him like 200 times.
That's the right way to do it if you ask me.
Yeah, I know Anna was gonna love that. Elisa Deal says, Anna, a gorgeous black white duck, very lonely, hanging at my pond, just had his friends show up. I think it's scalp, rare for a Northwest Ohio, had to share with someone. Back on TYT. During the social break, I was saying about how Vox and us are maybe the only two digital media companies left. And I was talking about their building in LA, and Edwin reminded me, no, it's empty. So everybody's in a lot of trouble. Hit the join button below. Anyways, Susan Scott did, and we appreciate you. And Sam Monica gifted 5 Young Turks memberships. You guys are the best. Casper.
Let's get to Benjamin Netanyahu's interview over the weekend in regard to Chuck Schumer's statements about how Israel needs new elections.
I believe that holding a new election, once the war starts to wind down, would give Israelis an opportunity to express their vision for the post-war future.
Chuck Schumer is the highest-ranking Jewish elected official here in America, a staunch supporter of Israel. What's your response?
I think what he said is totally inappropriate.
Disagree, but that wouldn't be the first time I have a disagreement with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who is absolutely furious with the fact that Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer decided to give a Senate speech on the Senate floor just last week, calling for Israel to hold elections as soon as the war in Gaza is over in order to oust Netanyahu. Schumer also said that Netanyahu is an obstacle for peace, which is absolutely correct considering Netanyahu himself propped up and funded Hamas, the very group that he's now at war with. Now here's more of Bibi's defiant response to Dana Bash.
It's inappropriate for to go to a sister democracy and try to replace the elected leadership there. That's something that the Israeli public does on its own, and we're not a banana republic. I think the only government that we should be working on to bring down now is the terrorist tyranny in Gaza, the Hamas tyranny that murdered over 1,000 Israelis, including some dozens of Americans, and is holding Americans and Israelis hostage. That's what we should be focused on. And as far as what Senator Schumer said, the majority of Israelis support our governments. 82% of Americans support Israel instead of Hamas, but the majority of Israelis support the policies that we're leading. If Senator Schumer opposes these policies, he's not opposing me, he's opposing the people of Israel.
So I have some polling. We're gonna break it down and talk about where public opinion is in regard to this war, both here in the United States and in Israel. Unfortunately, public opinion in Israel is overwhelmingly in favor of the war on Gaza, which will not keep them safe, in my opinion, in the long term. We'll get to that in just a moment. But Cenk, any thoughts on what Netanyahu said in that very testy interview?
Yeah, a lot. So number one, Chuck Schumer's speech was a watershed moment. It was historic. Leadership in the Democratic and Republican parties have never broken with Israel, ever, no matter what they did. And the fact that the majority leader in the Senate and the most senior Jewish leader in Congress broke with Israel is literally unprecedented. Never happened in my lifetime. So that is a giant shot across the bow to Netanyahu and more importantly to the people of Israel, saying you got to get rid of this guy. Like, this is way too much. It's hurting Israel, it's hurting Jews across the world. I think Schumer's absolutely right. When it comes to Netanyahu, he says, oh, we're not a banana republic, you can't tell us what to do. Yeah, you're right, no problem. Give us the $4 billion back.
Yeah, money has strings attached.
Yeah,
money has strings attached. So if you don't like criticism from US politicians and the American people in regard to how you're carrying out this war, or in regard to your existence as a leader of Israel, then stop taking the money.
Yeah, that's it, easy. You can prove your independence, you don't need us at all, God bless. By the way, Israel does pretty well. They have universal health care, they have paid family leave, a bunch of things we don't have.
Right.
So you're right, you don't need us, good luck to you.
Cenk, okay? I heard from politicians in Israel that Israel is not another star on the American flag.
Okay, fantastic. By the way, they're debating whether to give Israel $14 billion right now in the House. So let's just stop that debate. He doesn't want it apparently. No problem. But you can't say, give me $14 billion, I demand it. You must give it to me. Give me $4 billion every single year, I demand it. And I'm not gonna listen to a goddamn word you said. That's not how it works, okay? And by the way, give us Iron Dome back too. What else would we like back? So nonsense. You take money from us, you have to at least listen to us a little bit. You should listen to us completely, but you don't. So we should stop giving you the money. All right, now, you see all the tricks he threw in that short little segment? 62% of Americans prefer Israel to Hamas. Which is a terrorist group.
Yeah, wow.
Congratulations, wow, you must be so proud. So no, the reality is the overwhelming majority of Americans want a ceasefire. 80% of Democratic voters want a ceasefire. Netanyahu is 100% against the ceasefire. Netanyahu is also 100% against the Palestinian state. And the great majority of Americans, the great majority of Democratic voters want a two-state solution, which Netanyahu is blocking.
But let's get back to the actual question at hand. Okay, Dana Bash didn't ask Benjamin Netanyahu how the American people feel about the war on Gaza or how the Israeli people feel about the war on Gaza. Dana Bash asked about Chuck Schumer demanding that Israel hold elections to oust a deeply unpopular prime minister by the name of Benjamin Netanyahu. So Benjamin Netanyahu, why don't you talk about public opinion in regard to your leadership in Israel? He doesn't want to address that, right? So deflect. This is, I'm gonna talk about public opinion on this, public opinion on that. Let's talk about public opinion on you. Your own people can't stand you, okay? And Netanyahu has managed to remain in power during this war by convincing Israelis that it makes all the sense in the world for him to remain in power as long as the war is ongoing. So he has an interest in prolonging the war because he wants to hold on to power. He wants the power so badly. Chuck Schumer was 1,000% correct. And Netanyahu absolutely is an obstacle for peace in the Middle East and is hell-bent on dragging the United States into a hot war with Iran. That is what's currently happening. That is the state of the situation right now.
Yeah, when he said, he doesn't have a problem with me, he has a problem with the people of Israel.
No.
That's not remotely true.
Nope.
And so right now is, you're going to see the polls are against Netanyahu. If he were to call an election today, he would lose. That is why he's not calling an election. And the most important part, guys, is everyone, not only here but in Israel, thinks when the war is over, we're going to have to do an election and have a referendum on not just Netanyahu but his radical right-wing government. And I don't know which way that's going to go because a million things are going to happen between here and then. And the Israeli people, I feel like, are still in kind of a blind rage, thinking that the Palestinians are Nazis or something, which is insanity, right? So I'm not rose-colored glasses about it. But the problem here is that Netanyahu is incentivized to never end the war. Because once he ends the war, they're gonna have an election. And right now, as things stand, he would lose. So that means for his own self-interest, he's never ever going to end this war.
So to Dana Bash's credit, she did keep asking him the same question that he was trying to avoid answering over and over again. For instance, she pointed out to him that polls show that the Israeli people are growing more and more angry with Netanyahu's governing coalition. So let's watch that moment.
You're talking about support for the idea of toppling Hamas. That makes perfect sense. There were other polls in Israel, 3 major Israeli television stations that said what Israelis also support are early elections. That's what I really want to focus on here is Senator Schumer not calling to sort of topple the government, but specifically says when the war winds down, will you commit to calling new elections? That's my question, will you?
Dana, 2/3, first of all, what you said is wrong. The vast majority of Israelis oppose early elections until the war doesn't end. We've just had many polls on that. Look, a lot of the polls are twisted.
Channel 12
a lot of the polls
says,
are guided by
Channel
all
12
sorts of
says
conditions.
64% of Israelis support early elections.
But all polls show that's not. No, I'm afraid they asked them the question, do you support it during the war? And they said no.
But that's not what Schumer is calling for. He's calling for new elections when the war winds down.
Listen, I get how rough it is to accept the fact that the majority of your own people can't stand you. And he did try his best to twist her words and avoid answering the question. So Dana Bash tried one more time, which Bibi didn't like.
Our victory is your victory. We're fighting these barbarians that are not merely threatening the survival of Israel,
when the war winds down?
Everything that we hold dear together.
Will you commit to new elections when the war winds down?
I think that's something for the Israeli public to decide. But it's not something. No, look, that's something for the Israeli people to decide. I think it's ridiculous to talk about it. It's like after 9/11, after 9/11, you're in the midst of fighting the war against Al-Qaeda, and an Israeli would say, you know what we need now is either new elections in the US, or if your system doesn't allow, then President Bush should resign and we should have an alternative leader. You don't do that.
Well, let's
you don't
talk
do
about
that
why.
to a sister democracy, to an ally.
If Israelis were calling on George W. Bush to step down after he failed to keep the American people safe during the worst terrorist attack in American history, I would agree with the Israeli citizens arguing that.
Yeah, so there's 2 parts that's misleading to that. By the way, the French and many other countries did warn us, and they did it as friends, not as enemies. And they said, don't go into Iraq, that's a terrible idea. So as an ally, they were trying to help us by saying you're going in the wrong direction, and they were right. The second part that's misleading is, Israel has a parliamentary system, not the kind of presidential system that we have. We can't call early elections, Israel can, so can the UK and other parliamentary systems, so he's purposely trying to deceive you there. And did you notice the Freudian slip? He said, until the war doesn't end.
Yeah, okay. No, I totally noticed that, because he doesn't want the war to end, which this guy, has no problem with all of the pain, suffering, slaughter that he is overseeing and pushing for in Gaza, which does nothing to help Israelis in the long term who are concerned about their safety. If you're concerned about your safety, there's currently a Hamas manufacturing plant within your own government, and Netanyahu is the leader of that. But I just want to give you this number because it's really important. There was a poll conducted by the Israeli Democracy Institute, and they found only 15%. Let me say that again. Only 15% of Israelis want Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to stay in office after the war on Hamas in Gaza ends. He knows that. He doesn't want to accept it. He doesn't want to answer any questions about it. But Chuck Schumer was correct. He knows Chuck Schumer was correct. And Netanyahu is fully aware of the mass protests that have taken place in Israel against him. He is definitely aware that only 15% of Israelis would want him to remain in power after the war is over. He just doesn't want to accept reality verbally during this interview. And he's probably not used to getting any semi-challenging questions asked of him.
Yeah, so I'm gonna end on a couple of things here. One is a terrific quote by Rabbi Rachel Timmener, who is Chuck Schumer's rabbi at his temple. And I think she's absolutely right here. Let's go to graphic 8. I think that he said out loud, referring to Schumer, what the overwhelming majority of American Jews are saying to each other, which is that Bibi Netanyahu is making the world less safe for Jews and making Israel less safe for Israelis. Netanyahu himself has said that he completely opposes a two-state solution, and so he is an obstacle to peace. So yes, I think what Senator Schumer said was brave and right. And I saw her speech after October 7th. I saw her talking now, and I think she's terrific. That's what a real rabbi is supposed to say and do, and look out for her flock, as well as all Jews across the world, as well as all humans across the world. So I just loved what she said, and she's absolutely right. A poll, according to Institute for Social Policy and Understanding, just this February, and probably larger numbers now. Actually, the American Jewish community are more likely to favor a ceasefire, 50%, rather than oppose one, 34%. So when you see people on TV talking about how they represent the Israeli people or even Jewish Americans here, they're not telling you the truth. The reality is that Jewish Americans also want a ceasefire, and Israelis want Netanyahu gone. So get past Netanyahu and the right-wing Israeli propaganda machine and see it for what it really is. We desperately need an election in Israel so that Israel can go in a different direction and actually get to peace, because going for endless war is just gonna result in both sides getting killed endlessly.
All right, we gotta take a break. We'll be right back.
All right, back on TYT. Athletes LLC's back in the super chat. Like to see you guys. In fact, they mentioned that. They said, hey, y'all, haven't been on the live show for a while, but still love the community and the show. Sometimes folks can second guess being progressive and being fair, but empathy and your moral compass matter. Treat others the way you want to be treated.
Yes.
Love it, couldn't agree more. Happy to have you back. And I like that there's a business out there that's supporting us as well. April Craren writes in YouTube member section, just simply, I love Anna's dress. So,
thank you.
You speak for America, April. So Ian Gulbis writes in, hashtag TYT live, getting lemon on old school Let him swear, curse, cuss, all three if he wants. Thinking about it. I'm thinking about it. So hold. Early Bird 42 says advertisers. We don't need no stinking advertisers because the TYT community is too strong. Now that's true about the TYT community being too strong, but we kind of need advertisers. It's expensive to run this business. There's 75 people that work here. So it's a big network. We're on dozens of platforms, have tons of shows, tons of contributors. Check out Rebel Headquarters where we have dozens of hosts. So I love that we can give you all of that content, but we need both. And by the way, if we can get progressive advertisers, even better. Okay, that would be fantastic. But yes, look, if we got to 100,000 subscribers, which is a lofty goal, it's very hard in digital media to get to that number, we'd be in great shape. So overall, the heart of what you're saying is totally right. And we do need you guys to carry us a little bit here until we can get our legs under us. So I appreciate the sentiment. Hit the join button below, upgrade through the join button, or if you're watching anywhere else, TYT, or if you're watching on YouTube, tyt.com/join, and you could either join or become a member through there. All right, Crystal Dennis writes in, love this whole group and TYT keeps me sane. Even if I don't always agree with the takes on the show, I like knowing I can rely on facts and honesty. Well, we appreciate you and we appreciate that attitude. Box writes in, it was nice to see you in hell this weekend, Anna.
Oh, thank you. I was on a podcast called A Special Place in Hell, and it was fun. I really enjoyed it.
All right, God bless. Okay, let's go to Twitch. Bradshaw Crew 1 wrote in, TYT is the fairest outlet in the game. And then Perfect Phone Call Dragon wrote in response, too fair on some things. Okay, now we got a new one. We're hashtag too strong and also hashtag too fair. All right, we'll be hashtag two back. Back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Atomic Elbow said, with Cenk and Anna interviewing Don Lemon today, he wrote this in earlier, I'm looking forward to Anna's first question. Don, have you been to the Amalfi Coast? You were right. You were right.
That's all I wanted to know.
All right, and Athletes LLC is so back. A gift became a producer level, and I think gifted some membership. So great to have you back.
You know, look, some people are under the impression that if I somehow came across $24 million, I would skirt my responsibility to the audience and no longer do the show. And I just want to be here to let you all know that it is absolutely true. It is 100%. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know. Maybe I'd still do the show, but I just feel like I'd be a lot lighter about it.
Yeah, I'd ask you to invest, but okay. Anyways, become a member. No,
if I invest, you gotta listen to my business advice. I don't know if you'd like that.
Okay, anyway, let's do the show.
Let's get to Trump saying ridiculous, horrible things.
Any Jewish person that votes for Democrats hates their religion, they hate everything about Israel, and they should be ashamed of themselves.
Donald Trump had a Biden-like moment, honestly. You know, Biden says that if you're not voting for Democrats, you ain't black. You have Trump here saying to Jewish Americans, if you're not voting for Republicans, you're not a good Jewish person. Now, that's just the beginning of some of the statements that Trump made while appearing on Sebastian Gorka's radio program. Let's get into some more of it in just a moment, but Cenk, thoughts on what Trump said there, just right off the bat?
Yeah, so look, first let me be fair. When people that are Muslim voted for Trump back in 2016 and 2020, I couldn't believe it. And I had family members who did it. And I was like, he said he would ban us from the country. Have you lost your mind, right? So I get that as a concept, except I'm from a Muslim background, so I'm asking my, members in my community, You guys sure? Because that doesn't sound right to me, right? When you're not in that community, that's crazy. So imagine if I said, if you're not voting for Trump, you're not really black. What right do I have to say that? That's nuts, right? Or Biden, it doesn't matter, right? And so for him to say that they're not good Jews if they don't vote for him, absurdity. By the way, of course, as I've said many, many times before, 70% of Jews on average vote for Democrats historically in this country. So are you saying 7 out of 10 Jewish Americans aren't really Jewish because they're not voting for your stupid ass?
Joe Biden has defended Israel and its far-right government every step of the way. There have been a few moments where he rhetorically, critiqued the war on Gaza, but it was all rhetoric. In the meantime, he went behind the scenes, skirted Congress in order to provide hundreds of millions of dollars in additional military aid to Israel. Went around Congress to do it. Unilaterally gave them more money for this war. So I don't really understand what the point is here when you literally have the head of the Democratic Party doing anything and everything Israel would like, okay? But Sebastian Gorka asked about, some of the Democrats have been criticizing Benjamin Netanyahu. Trump, what do you think about that? Let's listen.
Could you explain why is it seemingly that this administration, including Chuck Schumer in the Senate, so hate the man that Israel chose as their prime minister? Why do the Democrats hate Bibi Netanyahu?
I actually think they hate Israel.
Yes.
I don't think they hate him. I think they hate Israel.
No, I mean, I personally can't stand the far-right government of Israel as someone who's on the left, and I can't stand the absolute slaughter that we're all witnessing in Gaza as we speak. That is not an indictment of Jewish people. That is not an indictment of Israeli civilians. It is an indictment of the leadership in Israel. But conflating the two is actually a trick that we've seen from various members of the Democratic Party, and I found that abhorrent and disgusting. And now Trump's doing it. So congratulations, Trump. Disgusting.
Okay, so let me prove him wrong in a couple of ways. So we covered this in a previous story in today's show. Only 15% of Israelis want Netanyahu to stay in office after the war in Gaza ends.
Interesting.
So are 85% of Israelis against Israel? But that's how Trump's mind works. Support the dear leader, otherwise you're disloyal and not good enough, right? So if you're in Israel, you must support Israel's leader. And if you're here in America, you must support Donald Trump. Except, here's another problem with that way of thinking. Current leader of America is Joe Biden. So are we betraying America if we don't support Joe Biden? Of course, none of this makes sense. He's an idiot. Israelis don't want Netanyahu. So now it's absurd. And then, by the way, now back to Jewish Americans. This was last month. This month, these numbers are probably higher. Again, as we showed you a little bit earlier in the show, the American Jewish community, 50% of them were for a ceasefire in February, and only 34% opposed. So again, majority of Jewish Americans want a ceasefire, but apparently they're being disloyal to themselves for wanting peace for themselves and for their loved ones in Israel.
Listen, Cenk, according to Trump, these Jewish people betraying their faith. Next video.
I really believe they hate Israel, and they also see a lot of votes. Don't forget, when you see those Palestinian marches, even I'm amazed at how many people are in those marches. And guys like Schumer see that, and to him it's votes. I think it's votes more than anything else, because he was always pro-Israel. He's very anti-Israel now. Any Jewish person that votes for Democrats hates their religion. They hate everything about Israel, and they should be ashamed of themselves, because Israel will be destroyed. You have Iran now making a nuclear weapon. None of that would have happened with me. That's a big thing.
Cenk, it's amazing.
My favorite part, and this might be the most hilarious lie that Donald Trump has ever told. Chuck Schumer is anti-Israel. Chuck Schumer is anti-Israel. That's the funniest thing I've ever heard. Okay, I don't know anyone more pro-Israel than Chuck Schumer. So,
by the way, you want to know who else can't stand Benjamin Netanyahu? Donald Trump.
Exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah.
He's saying that about Schumer because Schumer said, "Hey, Netanyahu's got to step down," and he said it because he loves Israel and he wants to protect Schumer wants to protect Israel, and he thinks Netanyahu's doing damage, and he's right? But the guy who hates Netanyahu just as much, no, actually way more, is Trump. And you want to know why? Because Netanyahu took credit for a drone strike that he didn't have a part in. He's like, no, I killed that guy, not Netanyahu. And Netanyahu congratulated Joe Biden after his victory in 2020, and Trump wanted him to pretend that Trump had won. That's why he doesn't like Netanyahu. Well, but hey, now we know, according to his own logic, Trump hates Jews.
Trump has also himself said that Netanyahu is an obstacle to peace.
And that on top. Look, he's such a clown and a half. And then when you say that this is anti-Semitic, of course, none of his followers will believe it. But to be fair to them, the supporters of the right-wing government of Israel have ruined the word anti-Semite. It used to mean things like this, where you say, I don't care what Jews think, I'll speak on behalf of Jews, and they have to have my opinion, et cetera, et cetera. Now it just means a critic of Israel. So.
Final thing I'll say about this is I'm curious to see how Trump's, I guess, unwavering support for Israel. I mean, at least that's the way he's presenting himself in this interview. I wonder how that will bode for the wing of MAGA that is also against the US's unwavering support for Israel, regardless of what it does.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to play for him as well for him as he thinks. Okay, in the bonus episode just for the members, we've got Bill Maher saying that if you weren't so depressed, you'd vote for Joe Biden, and it's really your fault, and you should cheer up. We're gonna have some strong opinions about that. So hit the join button below if you're on YouTube, tyt.com/join. We'll see you over there.